So I think I can move on to like the next topic, which is on sustainability and innovation, addressing climate change. So climate change is a critical global challenge, especially for regions like Southeast Asia and the Pacific Islands. So what strategies do you suggest for effectively bringing innovative technology to these like climate affected nations?
First of all, I think climate change is an example of a sort of challenge that is social in nature because of the so-called negative externalities. And right, I mean, if you have looked at, have you taken economics?
Yeah.
Right, but the tragedy of the common, right, which is that when it is a common property, everybody has no interest to take care of it, right? So, if I pollute, other people's problem, right, I don't have to pay for it, right? So, a large part of the challenge of climate change, I believe, is actually economic and political. In the technological innovations, is actually only a small part of it. Because unless you can get a collective agreement, right, that we all, protect the common together, we all contribute, then, nobody wants to do it, because if Singapore say, okay, I'll pay for doing this, but none of the other countries are willing to pay, you still get the same pollution. And part of the challenge is that unfortunately you have this built-in inequality between the more advanced country and the developing world. If you actually end up in Cambridge University, you should actually take a course by one of the Cambridge University economists. He's a Korean, Chang Ha-jun. He has an interesting book with a title called Kicking Away the Ladder. And he argues that in the past, many of the now advanced Western countries, they actually had many policy like industrial policy, like trade restriction, and non-protection of intellectual property in order for them to develop. So the current sort of trade regime, you talk about free trade, you talk about no barrier, no trade barrier, no industrial policy to protect your own economy, and respect of intellectual property. All these were not what they themselves practiced when they were developing. It's just that after they have developed, now they say that, everybody must do this. So now, emerging economies, they say, I want to do this, you cannot. So, for example, they say, okay, everybody, we cannot have coal, right? Because coal is a big emitter of carbon. But the fact of life is, right, the whole industrial revolution in England and all that were built on coal. So you cannot look at the contribution to the pollution now as a point in the curve. You have to look at the integration of the curve over the years, the area, right? That Western countries have been polluting, contributing to the global warming, heating all these years. And then now you say that all the different countries, you cannot do it. Everybody follow the same rule. That's unfair. You were allowed to pollute all the years, and nobody stopped you, because that time we have no industry yet, so we are not polluting. Now that we want to develop, you say you cannot use coal, you cannot use this. I think that's a fundamental unfairness in it. I mean, frankly, in the same way, like this Korean professor in Cambridge University had argued in his book, right? He said that, all this respect for intellectual property, you see, the whole British textile industry was developed by stealing technology from the Dutch and all that who were more advanced in textile industry. So only when they are developed, they say, okay, we must protect intellectual property, nobody can copy anything. So I'm not saying that you should steal intellectual property, but I'm saying that there should be a period where some rooms should be allowed for latecomer to have a chance to develop it. And so part of the problem I feel in this whole climatic change is that unless the Western countries are willing to recognize that we have to allow the developing countries greater rooms, and we must be prepared to impose a much stricter control on ourselves than on this global south. because, right, it's in that you have been polluting all these years, and so therefore it's only fair that you benefited from that, and therefore now you should take a similar. But could you get them to agree to it? I think that is the challenge. The advanced countries themselves are not willing to say we take a bigger hit. But without that, then the latecomer countries say it's not fair for us to be, so constrained when you yourself, 50, 100 years ago were not constrained. And so now it's being so this sort of unfairness is a political issue. The other thing is about the economy is that a lot of the time, you cannot just, technology can only do so much, because you need to have also policies. Like, right, in Singapore, you say that, if you want to deal with the problem of congestion in the rush hour in the public transport, right, you cannot say, let's think of innovation that somehow, there's a limit to how much you can allow people, right, in the congested hours to move. So you need to have a policy to say, okay, we use congestion pricing. Okay, in the peak hours, you have to pay more, right? And in the non-peak hour, you pay less. So this policy will help disperse the demand, right? Or you can say that we even ask companies to stagger their hours, right? Some company, open at 8, some open at 9, some open at 10. And you could argue that that policy would probably be more effective and more cost effective, right, in controlling congestion than in trying to find technology to squeeze more people into the train. There's a limit. Eh? In the same way with climate change, unless you actually have pricing policies to say that those who pollute more punish, have to pay more. And those who are more in need, are allowed to use it, that will probably achieve both a more equitable objective as well as changing behavior. So there's a limit to what technology can do. And the other is also you need technology that also require a community action. So for example, monitoring, for example, to ensure that a community as a whole follows certain, because if people cheat, right, so you can have technology to actually detect cheating, so-called, right, but then there's a question of privacy now, okay, so right, so if you have policy to say that everybody has the freedom to do what they want, you cannot restrict them, you cannot monitor their behavior, then it's very hard for the technology alone to work. So I believe that you need, the biggest challenge now for climate change is simply that there's no kind of political solutions between agreement between the advanced Western country, which had benefited so much from pollution in the past, and the developing country, to come to an agreement on action to be taken. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor Wong. I actually found that really insightful, because from your sharing, I understood that the issue of climate change itself is a very multifaceted and intersectional problem, where it goes just beyond beyond just innovation technology itself, but also the social and political factors that actually interferes with.
Okay, so on top of that, then the second thing I want to argue is that we also need a new generation of entrepreneurs who are more social impact driven. You see, in the past, most of the entrepreneurs are more looking at making money for myself. But hopefully, increasingly, a younger generation of entrepreneurs who are saying that we want to achieve social impact. And so you measure it not by how much money you make yourself, but what kind of social impact you make. And so they will develop business models that are more targeted not at maximizing the profit to themselves, but maximizing the impact. And you also need behavior that is somewhat different. In other words, the motivation of the social entrepreneur. So take a simple example, right? I mean, you are in a normal for-profit business. If you see a competitor doing what you're doing, you are not happy, right? Because they will take market share from you, right? But if you are social entrepreneur, you should be happy, because the other people do what you do. That means they increase the impact, right? And in fact, if they do it so well, I don't have to do it, because your goal is the impact. The more people do it, the better, right? So in fact, you want to share your knowledge of how it should be done. Whereas if you are in a private profit making, you don't want people to know how you do it, right? Because you are afraid that they will copy you. But a social entrepreneur should be happy if other people copy him. In fact, he will surely share, hey, this is how I did it. You go and do it also, in your own country, in your own city. Then I'm multiplying the benefit. So you need a different mindset. You need social impact-minded social entrepreneur. And then on top of that, now, as I said, you also need a new sort of institutional sort of rules for capitalism. Capitalism that is entirely based on free market for profit have to be constrained now by what we call stakeholder capitalism, where you need to take into account the interests of the larger community. You cannot be just shareholder return. And that means that some of the regulation we need to be regarding what you can do in a free market need to be regulated. So one simple example of that would be that, for example, right, under the current if you want to incorporate a for-profit company, you only care about return to shareholder, but you can be sort of registering a different kind of corporation called benefit corporation, B corporation, right? Where they will explicitly say that in addition to maximizing return to shareholder, I also want to achieve another purpose. It could be reducing my carbon footprint. It may be achieving what, and you state it explicitly so that people, investors invest who believe in this value, and you have to be transparent and report what you have actually done. So right now, unfortunately, a lot of companies are doing what we call greenwash. Greenwash means they claim, I'm very environmentally good and all that, but they don't produce any evidence. They don't allow outside parties to examine what they actually do. So the whole B Corp movement is to say that you are committed to actually state what your goals are, what your targets are, and you actually allow as part of the audit that an independent third party will audit actually what's your outcome. It's like financial audit, except now it is a social environmental impact audit, and you are committed to publish this. So this B Corp movement involving a third party so-called certification is a movement that has been started for some years and now growing. I am actually a board member of the B Lab Singapore, which is the Singapore branch of B Lab Global, which essentially offers this certification services of companies that say, I'm committed to not just be profitable as a business, because I have to be also achieve profit. I cannot just say I lose money, right? I try to, but at the same time, I'm committed to achieve certain goals. And this goal I will be measured. I have to produce a report every year, independently audited by a third party, just like financial audit, And then hopefully more companies will agree to this, and then that will help shift to a more what we call stakeholder capitalism, where we recognize that, okay, if we produce certain pollution, we agree to be measured, and we agree to that our target is to reduce this by so much. If you say, I believe in gender diversity, then I must report my gender diversity numbers and set my target and measure my progress and have this to be published. So I believe that hopefully this movement will start to pick up more, and then eventually more companies will sign on, and that becomes the norm. So I think you need both technological innovation, but you also need this institutional and economic and political innovation in combination.
Yeah, I really agree that there should be like some sort of like mindset or like attitude change that needs to occur in society that like moves us away from like the profit-driven, like profit-oriented mindset to like one where we care about like society's welfare as a whole too. So thank you, Professor Wong, for like sharing your insights and expertise on these important topics for today. Your perspective has really been invaluable. So that concludes our forum with Professor Wong Poh Kam. We extend our gratitude to Professor Wong for his time and insights into technology innovation, startups, and sustainability. As we strive for a sustainable and resilient future, let's continue to foster innovation and collaboration for the betterment of our global community. So thank you for joining us today.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you, and I'm very happy that young people today are having this interest, because the future depends on your generation, not on us. Okay, and thank you for helping to arrange this. Thank you, Mr. Lee, for supporting this.
Go Pascal! Go Pascal!